Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is the Public Affairs Roundtable. It is presented by the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce, affectionately known as Williamson, Inc., and we're glad to have you with us this morning. Our guests this morning are, so far, Senator Jack Johnson and Representatives Charles Sargent and Glenn Cassida. We're expecting Representative Jeremy Durham anytime now, and we will welcome him when he arrives. This morning we will try to more generally hit the things that have been going on particularly the last 2 or 3 weeks on the Hill in Nashville. And just as a note to our audience, we will try to reserve 10 or 15 minutes at the end for questions, so we hope you will be thinking about those. Looks like Senator Johnson, that Insure Tennessee has revived itself again, and I guess the governor is responsible for that. What's happening? It looked like it was dead.
It was, just to kind of set the stage. Of course, we had a special session. The governor proposed the Insure Tennessee to expand Medicaid back late last year. We went into a 1-week special session where special committees were on the Senate side. Extraordinary committees were appointed to hear the bill. It died in the very first committee, which was the Select Health Committee on the Senate side. And so that was pretty much the end of it during special session. Now, there was nothing at any time that would prohibit this issue from coming back during our regular session, which we're in now, and that's what happened.
Okay.
And it started with the Democratic Senator Jeff Yarborough, in conjunction with Republican Doug Overby, who carried the resolution during the special session. And it has passed 2 committee levels on the Senate side. We don't typically have subcommittees on the Senate side, but they did appoint a subcommittee to hear this. It passed the Senate subcommittee and the Health Committee, and then it passed the full committee just earlier this week. It will now come to the Senate Commerce Committee, which I happen to chair.
Okay.
And we will take that matter up on Tuesday. As it stands right now, I do not expect it to pass out of my committee.
Okay.
I think it's a 9-member committee, and I'm counting at least 6 solid no votes, and I am one of those votes, and I'm happy to explain why if that's necessary. But it's probably, in fact, it may not even get a second to the motion to proceed. I'll let the folks on the House side speak as to its fate on the House side. I don't think it would be expected to fare much better. I know that's very frustrating to some people, but again, we can get into the ins and outs. We have a pending lawsuit or a pending case before the United States Supreme Court that we will get an opinion on in June that weighs heavily into this entire decision, the King versus Burwell decision. So, and there are another number of other factors. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but I just want to be, for folks on both sides of the issue, I do not expect it to advance out of my committee on Tuesday.
Let's say that for filler, because we spent our entire show in January on that subject, and I'm sure some people would like to talk about a few other things. So if our audience doesn't have too many questions, we'll come back to it there at the end of the session, if that's okay with you gentlemen. The education, of course, is probably the most important issue to the Chamber, to our business community, to obviously to moms and dads here in the county. And there are several things that I observed are circulating regarding education. But one that I haven't heard about in a few weeks is Common Core. Glenn, you're kind of the point person of our delegation on that subject. What's going on, and what
It is, and being my role, I've kind of helped pull together several different factions on this. And so we have legislation that the bill number has changed several times over the last little bit. But the governor's staff, the Department of Education, those that are adamantly opposed to Common Core, Both Senate and House have all pulled together, and we've got everybody on the same page. And so there's legislation that will replace Common Core standards, and it's going to do this via a commission appointed 4 from the governor, 3 from the Senate, 3 from the House. New standards will be brought to this group. They will analyze it and then and implement it. It'll be done in a fashion of science this year. Next year will be mathematics. The following year will be English language, and the last year will be social studies. So in 4 years, we will look at the standards, write those from a Tennessee perspective. Okay. Both teachers and administrators and interested parties. So the standards will be superior. I would contend will be better than Common Core standards. I never really felt Common Core was that superior of standards. There was nothing, no quantitative measure to validate what was said. Okay. And all parties are in agreement, and so we're moving forward.
Great. Hit the high spots, but how will it be different than the Common Core standards?
This commission that will be appointed, 4 from the governor, 3 from the Senate, 3 from the House, will sit down and rewrite those standards. So as of today, there's nothing that I can show you, okay. But there will be, and I think the state will be very pleased.
Great, Jack. The Senate is in harmony with that.
We are. The lieutenant governor has signed off on this approach, and I expect it to pass without much opposition in the Senate.
Okay, great. Pre-K funding. Glenn, you've apparently taken a lead on massaging some of the laws regarding pre-K funding. Tell us what's going on there.
Well, and I had legislation that has been misunderstood, to say the least. And I'm kind of beginning to wonder if it's not intentional. I had a simple bill that said if a judge, and this if, everything on this legislation is contingent on this word if a federal or state judge mandated that because one county is getting universal pre-K, thus all counties must do that. And this law simply said, if that happens, if this 1 in 1,000 scenario happens, then and only then will the state withdraw from the pre-K funding on these actually 2 counties that have just now received it. And I can tell the language is written so legalese that it's confusing, and I did get that out of subcommittee. You know, I think the majority members of the subcommittee understood that I did not want implementation of universal K by fiat, by a judge. Only the legislature should be implementing something like this. But even though I'm out of subcommittee with the bill, I think I could go forward with it. I'm going to just rewrite it and attempt it next year.
Okay. Now, the legislation many years ago, I think, that created the BEP funding formulas was based on certain schools saying that it's unconstitutional for some schools to receive better or more favorable budgetary treatment than others. Now, how can this federal money come in to, say, one school district and not be applied to the others?
Well, and that is my concern, that a judge would say, lady or student from Dyer County, since you're not getting universal pre-K fund that Davidson and Shelby is getting, even though Shelby and Davidson are putting up the money, it's not state money. Okay. My concern is that a judge would say that's a violation of equal standing under the law, right. Thus Tennessee, you must universally implement pre-K. That's my, and that was the genesis of this bill.
Okay. Charles, the BEP funding, there are some changes this year, maybe.
Really, there's not going to be any changes. There were discussions about going to the 2.0 plan, which would, of course, Williamson County some funding. That's not going to be proceeding this year. As far as that's concerned, we're fully funding the BEP. I'm talking with the administration now. The area that they do not fully fund is the growth, what I call the growth BEP money. It should cost us about $30 million. They're putting roughly $16 million in it. To your fast-growing counties, this is a very important piece of the puzzle, because counties like Rutherford, Williamson, some that are, Montgomery, that are growing very fast. The first 1.75 in growth, they don't even pay for. So we have children coming into the school system that the state doesn't pay for the very first year. And we don't get that funding until the following year. So there's an amendment in to put the additional $15 million into the growth BEP. The administration is looking at it. Don't know if that will happen this year, but it's definitely on their radar, saying that this is not fair to your fast-growing schools.
Okay. That makes sense, and anything you can do to help us out, we would appreciate. Voucher legislation seems to be moving forward for the systems that have low-performing school districts. Is that still?
Bottom 5%.
Jack, tell us.
Yeah, it is. This is a proposal that the governor had back a year or two ago. It's something that really should have passed probably last year, I think. It got hung up in some political maneuvering and so forth. But this is a very simple program to allow for vouchers, opportunity scholarships, whatever name you want to give for them, to be given to those children who attend the bottom 5% of performing schools in the state. The vast majority of these, 80%, I think, of these underperforming schools in the bottom 5% are in the Memphis City school system. There is overwhelming support from the members of the Memphis delegation for this legislation. And I say this, Dave, because there are some folks here in Williamson County that have decided to take the lead in opposing a voucher bill that is not in any way going to affect Williamson County. It's not in any way ever going to affect Williamson County. And I think that some of the information that's being distributed by some folks with a particular group here in Williamson County is somewhat disingenuous. For us here in Williamson County, with the quality of schools that we have, to be opposing a voucher program that is going to help some kids trapped in failing schools in Memphis City is preposterous. The folks from Memphis want this. The Memphis City school system is in very bad shape. We're working on it. It's now an achievement school district, so there are some improvements being made. But this is a proposal that is supported by the governor, and it's supported by the vast majority of the folks from Memphis City. And for anybody to think that the three of us are going to oppose that to try to help these kids in Memphis, I'm just telling you, you're sadly mistaken.
Well, let me piggyback on that. And I'm going to be redundant, but there is a group in which misleading the residents of this county, saying, and even though we've met with them and said, look, this is not going to affect Williamson County. Outside students are not coming into our county. This is aimed at Shelby County and maybe one or two schools in Davidson. And yet they continue to mislead the public in Williamson County. It's disappointing that that a political group would mislead to advance their political agenda.
Is there concern to be somewhat take the other side of this? Is the concern that it's a Trojan horse, that once you get vouchers somewhere that all of a sudden they're going to start creeping in to other school districts? Charles?
No, this bill is drafted tight enough that that's not what we're trying to do. That's not the intent of the legislation or anything of that nature. I mean, for Williamson County, even if we board it up to the bottom half the school districts, Williamson County still, in no one's lifetime, and I know there's some young people out here in the audience, when they become my age, there will not be a voucher here in Williamson County. I mean, so they're just distorting this. It's sad to think that just because you live somewhere and because of economic status or whatever, that your children do not deserve a good education. If we continue and we don't do this, we're going to be the same place 20 years from now. We'll be talking about the same issue. We got failing schools in the inner cities, and we have to do whatever we can to help these children. And I think it's good for everybody. If we make them, we can get them to have their education, you know, they will have jobs. They will be, you know, and they're going to be happy with themselves.
Right.
And I don't think we need to stick these children without any type of option. And it will never, we'll never see it here in Williamson County.
And let me add one more thing, Dave, because those of us who support this voucher bill, for the bottom 5% of performing schools in the state, we get called anti-public education. Now, all three of my kids attend Williamson County Public Schools. Glenn's kids attended, Charles's grandkids attend Williamson County Public Schools. To say we're anti-public education is ridiculous. And I'm telling you, it hurts the credibility of anyone who would make such an accusation. But one of the arguments that is made is to say, well, you just need to adequately fund these schools. The Memphis City school system per capita is getting more funding from the state of Tennessee than any other district in the state in terms of the state resources and allocation.
Head and shoulders.
Absolutely, by far and away. We can get back into the BEP conversation about why Williamson County gets hurt in BEP funding, but Memphis City Schools gets tons of money from the state because they are underperforming and for some other reasons. So for years, we've been pumping money into this corrupt, failing school system down in Memphis City. Now, it's now an ASD, an Achievement School District. That's making progress. The voucher bill is not the only thing that we're doing. We're also trying to improve the schools through the ASD and through some other reforms that we have made. So it's a multifaceted effort. But I just want everybody to take a deep breath. The voucher bill is okay. Everybody's going to be good.
That's what I like about our discussions here, is that we can dig in a little deeper and explore more details. And we appreciate the color, gentlemen. What is a virtual public school? I noticed that there is a bill in the House that is moving forward, enabling local school districts to create and operate online public schools. Have y'all had any personal involvement in that bill at all?
I'm not involved. Charles, are you by chance?
I'm not involved,
Okay.
but we have a virtual school over in Upper East Tennessee that their charter is being pulled. It sounded good when they started this, and there may be a place, but we have to set the standards at a very high level. And the school I'm thinking of, they have students from probably 50 or 60 counties here in Tennessee as registered, but their grades have been horrible. They're worse than the schools they came out of, and that they're losing their charter this year as far as that's concerned. So there are some out there, but until they can prove that they actually work and their grades are at least on par to what we have,
Right.
but really I think they need to be better. And the school up in East Tennessee, they lost their charter and they'll be closing down at the end of this school year.
Okay.
David, and this is an important point. When we implement charter schools, when we implement virtual schools, and they don't succeed, we shut them down. The same standard I think we should be holding to public schools. If you don't succeed, then you should be addressed, maybe even shut down.
Okay. Teacher Protection Act. Liability protection for our teachers, administrators. Do we not have that already? Jack?
Well, what happened is back in, I guess going back probably to the 70s, because teachers are required to have some liability protection. And most teachers buy that protection through either their union or some type of professional organization. And to be quite honest about it, what happened back under Democratic control, far more favorable towards the unions, is this was something that they basically gave to the unions is we'll let these teachers get their, as part of their union dues, they'll get their liability protection. So it gave a reason for teachers to join the union.
Almost have to.
You almost have to, yeah. And so it, coercion may be a little bit strong of a word, but it gave a lot of teachers a lot of incentive to join the union, and quite frankly, it funded the teachers union to a large extent. And so what we've talked about doing is providing this protection. Nothing to say you can still join your union, you can still be part of another professional organization. Nothing's going to stop that, but you're not compelled to do so in order to get this liability protection.
And they were just a carve out, because if you think of our state police, our engineers, our state police, if they get sued, they're covered under the state liability.
Okay.
Our engineers that are doing bridges and roads, they're all covered. There was a carve out strictly for teachers, and now we're going to provide liability coverage for universal for all our teachers, and we're going to treat them no different than we treat any other state employee. So it's really a good thing.
It is, and one more point, it's a nice little financial benefit to the teacher. They're no longer paying for this out of their own pocket.
Well, I was a little surprised when I saw this that we didn't already have it.
Yeah. Some people tried a few years ago, didn't they?
I had a bill about 45 years ago before we had control, and it went nowhere. But now we are at the place that we're not even doing this where the bill is going to be in the governor's recommendations, and the governor has already said he will fund the cost of the liability insurance.
Right. Any other education issues or discussions going on that y'all are involved in?
The only other thing I think we will see, I believe we're going to see some additional funding for our technology. As you know, going back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we put about $42 million into technology. I think we have some one-time money, and we may be seeing some funding for technology. That's exciting to all the schools throughout the state.
Good, great. Guns in trunks, guns in parks. We're still tweaking it, and somebody, Jack, give us an update on that from the Senate perspective. And
Sure. I'm happy to. Again, to go back a little ways, when we, back a few years ago, we passed legislation that would allow carry permit holders, and let's lay the groundwork here. We're talking about carry permit holders who have gone through the background check and the fingerprints and the training, paid their $200 fee and whatever else to obtain a handgun carry permit. I have mine, to carry their weapon when they're in state parks. There was discussion at that time to say, well, really it should be, all parks, including city or county parks. The decision was made back then to opt out or allow municipalities and counties to opt out and say, no, we're going to continue to prohibit even carry permit holders from carrying or having their weapon on them when in a city or county park. The legislation now would remove the ability of cities and counties to opt out or to continue to prohibit these carry permit holders from having their weapon. And by the way, it's going to pass. It is going to pass without question. Now, for those who make an allegation of hypocrisy about local control, we all support local control. The Constitution in the state of Tennessee is pretty clear that with regards to any matter dealing with firearms, that will be handled by the General Assembly. Now, we can delegate that authority as we have done previously. The concern we have here in Williamson County is that many of our schools utilize parks for school activities, and that is a problem. Regardless of where you feel about should a carry permit holder be able to have their weapon in a park. So set that to the side, whether you're for or against that. We should all be in agreement that if we jeopardize the ability of our schools to utilize parks, because you're not allowed to have a gun on your person in a school, and we're not changing that, but the ability of our schools to utilize parks is a real problem. So that's where some of the language is, and that's what the three of us, and including Jeremy, are very focused on, because we do that a lot. I mean, whether it's softball practice or field track or soccer and so forth. We don't want to jeopardize the ability of our kids to be able to use our parks. So the lawyers are working on the language, and there's some discussion about the difference between owned and operated by a school, which a school building would be, versus utilized or used by a school. And one example would be this: if the Franklin High School marching band participates in the Christmas parade and is marching down Main Street, well, that is a school utilizing a municipal facility for a school activity, a sanctioned school function. Well, does that mean that no carry permit holder is allowed to stand on the sidewalk with their weapon on them? So that's one example, kind of to the other side. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that issue is resolved. Some people have said, well, let's just opt Williamson County out, or let's provide a special designation. I've had conversations with the county attorneys, city attorneys, and our school attorneys, and we all have, and we're working with them to try to get this addressed. The idea of opting Williamson County out or it is not gonna fly, and that's constitutionally suspect anyway. But we're going to try to do everything we can to protect the ability of our schools to utilize parks.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we can. I think Jack did an excellent job on that, and we know the situations here at Cheek Park and Franklin High School, and over at Brentwood. I mean, we can cite examples after examples, and I believe that will be able to be worked out in some shape, form, or fashion, that we can distinguish when the school is using that park for a school function.
Okay. Now, the NRA is going to be in town, next week for a big convention, 70,000 strong or something like
Or
that?
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
I think it's 2 weeks.
Now, are y'all going to go to the concert or not?
I
I'm
am
a
not
huge-
going to the concert.
I'm a huge fan of Alan Jackson. I want to go. I'd like to go see Alan Jackson. I don't think I can get tickets though. I think they're sold out.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to have to wait for another time.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, we're going to be pretty busy. I think
Yeah.
up on the hill. There's not going to be a
For the
lot of
next
free
couple
time.
of weeks, it's not going to be a lot of free time for us
Let
just
me
to
let me say
run
this.
back and forth.
Let me say this, Dave, because some of the emails we get lots and lots of emails, have made the assertion that one of the reasons we always have a number of gun bills. Glenn spoke to this, I think, very well the other day on the radio. That we're doing a bunch of these things because the NRA is come. To my knowledge, there are 2 bills.
Yeah.
That the NRA is supporting
Yeah.
or endorsing in the state of Tennessee. And I'm carrying one of them, and it's a very technical issue that I'm working with the Sheriff's Association on. And Charles is carrying it on the House side. And so there's not this plethora of legislation because the NRA is coming. I want to make clear that.
Yeah.
It sounds like sometimes when you see it in the paper or you hear it on TV, all we talk about is guns, and it's not
Popular subject in the Tennessean.
correct.
It is. And let me piggyback on that comment, Butch. I mean, we literally spend of a 10 or 11 hour day, we spend 90% of that time on economic issues, maybe measured in minutes on guns. Yet, according to the Tennessean, you would think that's all we talked about. And it's just, rest assured, that is a very minor thing we talk about, but that's just where they point. And wherever you point the camera or the pen,
Right.
that's what you perceive as being truth.
You only spend 10 hours a day?
Couple of local issues that, one of which I heard about through my network of friends, but Carter House, the gymnasium there beside the Carter House. Apparently there was some funding that was supposed to demolish that structure, which has become a real eyesore and a health safety issue. Tell us. Apparently, that funding got pulled. Is that?
Well, it didn't get pulled. It wasn't funded in the governor's budget. But working with the administration, working with Jack, Glenn, and Jeremy, I've talked to the Environment and Conservation and to General Services, the Historic Commission. I believe there will be funding in this year's budget that will be able to tear that down. And then, as you know, once we remove the building, we have about $900,000 in there to reclaim that, build something, because we have the money to do that, but we don't have the money to tear the building down. So,
Right.
And we're not allowed to use, because of the way the preservation money came in, we're not allowed to use to demolish that building. But there is an amendment in, or it's going to be in the governor will be announcing his amendments on Monday, and that hopefully it will be in that amendments on Monday. If not, there is also another amendment in to fund that. But Jack, Glenn, and Jeremy, we've worked very close with the Carter House, the Battle of Franklin Trust, the Franklin Charge. We're all on the same page, and I feel 99% sure that we'll have the funding to remove that gym off that property this year.
Let me say, oh, I'm sorry, Glenn.
I was going to say, Dave, there's a reason why we call him the Silver Fox.
And I want to piggyback on that, and Charles is very gracious and kind to share the credit with this, but this is why it's important to have someone like Charles in the position he's in as chairman of the Finance Committee. And let me just say, and this is not showing any favoritism, although we do that to Williamson County, the State Historical Commission had this as their #1 project, okay? And this is the commission that represents the entire state. And there are a lot of projects on there. It's kind of like building roads. I mean, they prioritize, and they have limited funding, and so they allocate the resources as best they can. And when they submitted their budget request to the governor, this was in there, and it was their #1 project throughout the entire state, was to tear down this gymnasium, because it's part of a much more important issue with the Battle of Franklin and preserving that land, and most people are quite aware of some of the efforts that are taking place. The governor, as he is forced to do, had made some cuts in the budget, and unfortunately this is one of the items that got taken out. But we, as Charles said, we're very optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we can get that put back in.
Like I said, I feel 99.9% sure that the funding will be in there when we finalize the budget in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Great. And the reason this is a state issue, just for our audience's benefit, is because it was part of a land swap where the state actually received that property in exchange for some other property that was needed for county uses or something. Is that correct?
Basically, you'd have to go back, really, the state took over control of that property approximately 8 years ago. And someone wrote me and said, you know, our children won't be able to use that building. That building has not been used in the last 3 or 4 years. I was there with the city police, the Mayor Moore is here. I mean, that building is actually falling down. Windows are being broken out. They can't secure the building. And the state did take it over about 8 years ago. When about 6 years ago, the $900,000 I talked about was put aside to historic preservation. We had a big meeting over there. That, you know, I can remember the banner on the side of the building. We were going to redo this and everything, and that never happened. But the money is still sitting there. So once we tear it down, and the state has said, both THEC and General Services, the commissioners, I've met with them, and they said that we could demolish the building. The biggest thing we have to do, there's a asbestos boiler down there. We have to get that out so, you know, we don't pollute any of the land or anything of that nature. Right. So it was a swap about 8 years ago, yes.
Good. This is going to be a question every month until Mac Hatcher is built or widened. But how about giving us an update on Mac Hatcher and in not only the northwest segment, but the southeast segment as well, because I spent about 15 minutes getting from Highway 96 to Lewisburg Pike last night. I was thinking about y'all.
Let me give. You weren't thinking real good about it at that point in time.
Was there love in your heart?
I was thinking, all right, I can't wait till in the morning.
That project was not on the list. We will not see the road project list, and I always threaten to do it another way, until after we pass the budget. I always told the commission, I said, you know, we may want to see the list before we pass the budget. But you can imagine what that would be like as far as that's concerned. And one of the biggest reasons, and I'm going to give the commission a lot of credit, he had to pull approximately $400 million in projects that were on the drawing board to do. Part of the reason is a lot of our money, we do matching funds from the federal government. The federal government, and I'm not blaming the feds, it sounds like, well, I guess I am, but the federal government has not passed a highway funding bill. They normally would do it for a 6 or 8 year period of time. They have not passed one of those bills since 2005. And it's very difficult, not knowing what amount of federal money you're going to receive, to try to do a $30, $40, $60 million project. especially if we're using 50 or 60% of that money from the federal side. So, as you know, the feds were going to run out of money. The federal transportation were going to run out of money in March. Right. They did an extension now to May. So it's hard to plan a $40 million road project if we're putting up 20 and the feds are putting up 20 to get it planned. In May, I've been told already, that they're going to probably extend it to October, to the end of October. That's when their fiscal calendar is going to be. And there's not a will that I see in Congress to do anything with the gasoline tax. So a lot of times, even if we raised ours and there's not a will there to raise ours at the present time, we'd be putting 100% of the dollars in. We'd be getting nothing from the federal government. So John has done an excellent job, and some of this money will be able to be released on the new road project list. We'll just have to see when it comes out, probably in May, if, and he does a 3-year project. So if it's going to be on the 3-year project at that time. The money's just for roads. They're not there until we know what the federal government is going to do on the funding.
As dysfunctional as things are in Washington, and I see no hope of that changing soon, could we not just refuse federal funding for roads and replace it with our own tax regime and just refuse the federal money?
You could do that, but our road budget is approximately $1.8 billion. Mm-hmm. Of that, about $800 million to $900 million is coming from the federal government. So if we refuse that money, we'd have to be looking at raising the gasoline tax on the state side approximately 30 cents. And there's no will to raise that by anybody in the House, never mind Jeremy, Jack, and I, and Glenn. So it sounds good, but we'd just be throwing $800-900 million
and keep in mind, we're paying that.
Right.
Well, in terms of our federal gas tax.
I was just suggesting a deal kind of like Insure Tennessee. Just say, guys, we don't want your money. Don't tax our citizens in Tennessee. But that's not my place to make suggestions like that. But I mean,
oh, trust me, we share your frustration with dealing with the federal government. It's one of the most frustrating things we deal with.
The gasoline tax in the state of Tennessee is 21 cents on the state tax, and basically 19 cents. They're percentages here, but it's about roughly 40 cents. Right. And we used to be a donor state that we didn't get back all the money that we received. Now we're probably an even state, or we may get 1 to 2% more money than we send up to Washington. So we're no longer a donor state, what I call a donor state.
Good. Yeah. Good.
As far as that's concerned.
Well, it looks like I-65 is going to be opening down to 840, the widening project, here soon, and that'll, I'm sure, help my situation.
I want to make Glenn feel good, and I've said this for 3 or 4 years. He knows what I'm going to say.
14, but who's counting? Yeah.
As you know, I-65 was great to 96. Mm-hmm. And that's where my district line stopped. Yeah. And it wasn't past 96 going south. So, but what happened, people in my district were backing up because it was going from a 4-lane, and it was backing up to Cool Springs Boulevard and everything. So I had to make sure that we could get the people, down there. So I had to help Glenn and get the road done.
It is much appreciated.
It's certainly been a mess, and we appreciate any help you can give us. It's time to open it up for questions from our audience. I hope some of you have decided to step up to the microphone. If you would, go ahead and start making your way up to the microphone, and let's hear from our audience this morning. If you will, tell us your name and where you live, and give us your question, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Bill Qualia from Franklin, Tennessee. Company name is In the Cloud Technology. My topic and my passion is cyber school. And so what I would strongly recommend is that you don't throw the baby out the bathwater. My granddaughter Samantha was saved by the Pennsylvania State Cyber School. She was a failing student. She went through the cyber school program there and became A's and B's type of a student. She's on her way to college now. And so instead of throwing that cyber school program out, I agree with you, the Tennessee Cyber School hasn't been the greatest, but there has been some success in there. What I would recommend that you all do is do a little bit of research and look at what the state of Pennsylvania has done and why they've been so successful in their program. Before you put the axe to the tree, so to speak, to check that out and see if we could bring that program into the state of Tennessee, because that program does really help a lot of particular individuals, especially the ones that are being bullied and or don't they don't fit into the regular curriculum of the high school. Pennsylvania's program is really great because it allowed for integration into the all the other activities in the school, and it connected the student, yes, with the local school, but gave them an alternative to the classroom. And
If I may, let me respond to that, because I want to make sure I made myself clear. We are not doing away with all virtual schools.
Right.
But
Okay.
like any school system, the one I was talking about in Upper East Tennessee is not adequately taking care of the students. There are about 3 or 4 other virtual schools doing a good job. And I think you would agree we need to get rid of the ones that are just doing this for a funding method or for a profit method. So we are looking at that very closely, and I appreciate, and we will look at that, the other school, but there are still going to be virtual schools. It's just that one school that is nowhere coming close to meeting the standards that we are going to close down at the end of the school year. The other ones will stay in place.
Yes.
that sounds very good. And then the radio ads do say that the grades are up, but obviously that you guys don't agree with that. So you're looking at data from a different where can us as John Q. Citizen go to get those that data so that we can help support your efforts in realigning the cyber school program? And I have one more question after that.
Email one of us, whichever district you live in, and
Okay.
we'll have our people research this for you via the Department of Education.
Okay, very good. And the last thing is about our road system. The gasoline tax is regressive. It hurts the average person, the average poor people who or the blue collar workers are already holding down 2 different jobs trying to make their life work. They're the ones that are traveling the most on our streets, trying to make things work. And so gasoline tax is always regressive and always hurts them. So what I would recommend is that you all look at other funding sources, such as taxes on the tires, taxes on maybe bringing up the auto licenses. That way, the people who are buying the more luxury autos also contribute to that. The people who are buying bicycles, even though if you talk to the cyclists, they'll be against this, but purchasing those bicycles, again, they are using bike paths and established bike paths through the city, and also that may be another funding. And lastly, I look at what Texas did, even though it's really a pain. They also put on toll programs to pay for particular arteries through the city. But if you're going to do toll, it has to be automatic. It has to be an automatic thing. So those are my suggestions on that part. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, on the roads, let me say one thing about Tennessee compared to Texas. If you look, in Texas, they bond their roads, and they owe quite a bit of money on their roads. Where here in Tennessee, we do not do bonding on our roads. So I know we get compared, and we're one of the top 5 states on roads, And the nicest thing about it is that we do not bond our roads. And in Texas and other states, they have couple $100 million in bond indebtedness on the taxpayers for bonding the road. So, yes, we could do on MacHatcher and some of our top 5 projects, we could turn around and borrow the money because we have the capacity. Let's say we borrow $200 million, $300 million, but if we borrow $300 million, we have a bond indebtedness then of $33 million. So that's one thing we've stayed away from, and the reason is that that's $33 million bond indebted payment we have to make for the next 20 years. So a $300 million road costs us $660 million. So we've been very careful about not doing bonding our roads. Excuse me if that's a long answer.
Right.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yes,
My
sir.
name is Galen Hall. I'm a happy resident of Brentwood Hills. Brentwood Hills, yes, that's where I live. I have a question and then a comment. On the way in this morning, I was listening to NPR, and there was a segment on the Achievement School District, and they interviewed Chris Barbick. It didn't sound as though things were all fine with the Achievement School District, and I'd heard reference to that in your conversation. I just wondered if you could expand on that. The other thing I'd like to mention is that a couple of years ago, I co-founded a new organization that we call Tennessee Immigrant and Minority Business Group. We've been meeting on a monthly basis now for a year and a half. We do have members in our organization who are residents of Williamson County. Williamson County is becoming increasingly diverse, as you all probably know. We will host a forum of 5 of the 7 people running for mayor of Nashville on the 19th of May at the Global Mall, and I'd just like for everyone here to know about that. We will be putting out information about that from here on. There are some very exciting issues that are coming up with the mayoral race, and we hope to have them address on.
Thank you.
Well, on the Achievement School District, and again, I didn't hear I don't listen to NPR, but I didn't hear the news story. I will tell you, they're shaking things up, and specifically in Memphis City with the Memphis City school system, because you have decades and decades of corruption and graft. And let me put this into perspective: the Memphis City School District, they have more people on their payroll doing jobs other than teaching than they do teachers on their payroll. It has effectively been a jobs program for anyone who had any affiliation with the school board for many, many years there. And when you go and play in their sandbox, they're not going to be happy about it. And that's why we have achievement school districts, because when you have a failing district, you basically go in and take it over. And the state has that authority. A school district is a political subdivision of the state of Tennessee. It's created by the state, and it's accountable to the state. So I'm sure there's some unhappy people down there, because they go into a school, they fire the principal, they fire the assistant principals if they deem it necessary, they fire as many teachers as they deem necessary, and they bring in new people to try to turn it around. So if I was employed down there, I would probably be pretty unhappy too. But if I was a parent of a child and I didn't have any other options, I couldn't afford to move, I couldn't afford to send my kids to private school, the only educational option I had was to send my kid down the street to a failing school, I would want the state to come in and shake things up.
Yeah. And I understand the education bureaucracy is not happy with the reforms, but it's not working. Not only is it not working, it's failing miserably. We're yet again going to lose another generation of children. You know, it's 50 and 60% at reading at a 12th grade level. That's unacceptable. We've got to do some dramatic things. Now, there is no panacea. I wish that we could do one thing and put it in like a math formula and bada bing, bada boom, there's your answer. That doesn't exist. But you're going to look at us, I hope you approve of us experimenting with things, thinking outside the box to try to solve this education problem. Because if you don't, if you're a young person and you don't come in and you're not educated, you don't learn the language, you don't integrate into the American society, you will fail. Sadly, you will fail. And we don't want that, because as Ronald Reagan said, a rising tide raises all ships. We've got to be successful in educating our young people, all of them.
Mr. Gary?
Gary Buchanan, Thompson Station, Tennessee.
Neighbor.
I hate it Jeremy's not here because I want to compliment him. He is working on legislation which I hope you all will support that would make it a felony to kill a canine officer's dog. I said that roughly, but that's what it is. And I guess I was shocked when I read what legally, how weak the law is now for that action.
Yeah.
And I want to compliment you all for that. And by the way, Jack, in the Tennessean this morning, they reported the NRA, if they can get the ethics and legal matter all cleared up, want to give you 2 tickets to the game. I mean, to Alan Jackson.
I doubt that.
And I want to comment about you for a second. Congratulations on your very successful hip operation, and you look great, and you're walking extremely well. So congratulations.
Gary's my neighbor, and I'm appreciative that he doesn't keep me up too late at night with his loud music, and he doesn't. So I'm thankful for that. So thank you, Gary.
The canine the police officer dog, I'm carrying that bill on the Senate side too, and it is a good piece of legislation. It passed out of subcommittee the other day. I'll have it up either this coming week or the week after in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I expect to pass it. And these are some very, very special animals that they put their lives on the line just like police officers do, and they deserve that level of recognition.
Mayor Moore, outside of Mac Hatcher and the old gym, City of Franklin, have any issues that you'd like to mention?
We do live in a utopia. We're very blessed to have such great legislators representing us and doing such a good job up there, and I'm impressed with just how knowledgeable you are. I think one thing that, one of the issues that has been a concern to us, and one of the tools in our toolbox we've lost, is annexation capability. So I know there's some action on that, so it might be a good opportunity to comment on that, and we appreciate you working to give us back that tool.
I'm going to let Jack and Glenn and I and Jeremy are very aware of this, and we know exactly where we are. The bill is moving a little quicker in the Senate, and Senator Johnson has done an excellent job. I believe we have this situation taken care of. It may not be the perfect, but it does solve the situation we have here in Brentwood and Franklin. So, Jack, I know you've spent hours on this, and I give you a lot of credit.
Several hours yesterday in the Senate State and Local Government Committee with basically an annexation calendar that we met almost exclusively to talk about annexation issues, and it was a good conversation. And I'll try to be brief, but as most folks know, last year, and this has been in the works for some time. Last year we passed legislation to repeal a municipality's ability to annex by ordinance. Now. How much background do you want here, Dave? Back in the 90s, the state passed Public Chapter 1101. If folks who've been in Tennessee for a long time will remember tiny towns and all the conversation about tiny towns. And the state passed Public Chapter 1101, which allowed, what it basically set forth is that cities and counties would get together, come up with what they call urban growth boundaries, and basically look forward, look ahead 20 years or so, and come up with areas where cities felt like their growth would be, and establish that with public comment, with public hearings and so forth, come up with urban growth boundaries. Once those are established, then a municipality could annex by ordinance. You didn't have to have a referendum. We repealed that last year, and due to some over-aggressive municipalities in certain parts of the state. And that really created a problem for some fast-growing areas like Franklin and Brentwood and Spring Hill and other parts of the state. And so, and let me just say, in my 9 years in the state Senate, I've never had a single complaint from a constituent about annexation in Williamson County. Not one. Not one. Now that tells me something, because there aren't many issues I haven't received at least one complaint about, but never one. And what that tells me is that our cities and our county were doing it the right way. They weren't abusing it. They were making accommodations for growth. But that option was taken off the table. And there was overwhelming support for that in the General Assembly. There was nothing we could do to stop that. But we have been working to try to make some, if we're going to have annexation by referendum now, and this is only where it's contested, we at least want to have some very clear-cut guidelines to allow for faster-growing counties to do some things like non-contiguous annexation if they want to, within the urban growth boundary, and also to set forth some very clear guidelines about who votes in a referendum and so forth. So we passed a number of amendments out yesterday. I've sent all those over to the City of Franklin, City of Brentwood, and other cities in the county to get their feedback on it. So that legislation will be heading to the floor, and I look forward to working with Rogers and Ken and Betsy and Brentwood and Rick and Spring Hill, any of the areas affected with that, to get their feedback to try to make it as palatable as possible.
We give credit to Jack. Charles and I and Jeremy yesterday worked for a while on coming up with an amendment to make this work, and we had a mathematical formula, and it was going to be in depth, but we thought we could have done it, and then Jack just pops over. Well, we solved it. I've taken care of it, and thank you, Senator.
That's typically how we do things in the Senate.
Oh, no.
They cannot count, but they can do other things.
That's great. Mayor Anderson, we got a couple of minutes. Outside of the guns in parks, Bill, has the county got any concerns that you'd like to mention?
Well, thank you. I would echo what Mayor Moore said. We appreciate what you do for us up there, and I call your attention to something sent to me about midnight last night through one of our reporters.
You were not up at midnight now.
No, I read it
Okay,
this morning.
okay, thank you. You were implying that you read this at midnight, so I had to correct that statement.
And I want to reiterate the things you all have said about growth communities and what challenges in our cities, whether you're talking roads, schools, services that are provided. Carol Robertson sent to me last night, so it's out through the Census Bureau that Williamson County was the highest percentage growth of any county in the state of Tennessee from period X to period X during this period of time, 13 through 14. Now, numerically, Davidson County, Nashville, numerically had the largest growth, some 9,500. She might could pull it up for you and give me the exact numbers. We had about 6,500 plus in that 1 year window. When you talk about growth of schools and BEP funding, and I concur with what Jack was saying down in Shelby County in Memphis, and what we're doing here in that year lag, Charles, that you're talking about. And then our roads, our network, and yesterday and day before from Washington, meeting with our delegates up there all week long and looking at the issues of how that affects Tennessee. 1 minute. And I know I got 1 minute. A lot of the things that are occurring in these fast-growing counties, Wilson and all that, that's being shoved down to our level, expected for us to pay for those, and it's getting increasingly difficult because there is no will to pass a tax. There is no will to add a penny here and a penny there. It may be needed, but there's no will for that. So I remind you, from the court systems, more people require more judges, more people, and we don't get that reimbursement from the state. I remind you of all of these things that Ken and I have to deal with. I'm finished, Dave. So it's not it's just a comment, but I do appreciate you all being mindful of our needs down here.
Right.
Thank you.
30 seconds, gentlemen.
Email us, call us. We want to hear from you, and we need to hear from you. That's our role as legislators.
I would agree with Glenn with his comments, and the budget is in a lot better shape this year. And hopefully the next time we're here at this meeting, at the fourth Friday, we will be probably out of sessions or very close to being out of sessions. We may go into the first week of May, but most likely we'll be out.
Yeah. We really appreciate your being with us this morning, gentlemen. The color we get, the explanations we get of the behind-the-scenes details of all this legislation is helpful, and we very much appreciate your coming and sharing that with us every month. Also want to thank Vanderbilt Health. They have underwritten some of the cost of the chamber in putting this program on, and we appreciate their help there. We definitely want to thank the county, Williamson County and WCTV Channel 3, Comcast Channel 3 for providing the facility and the staff to to make this happen every month, and that's a tremendous asset to the chamber and to the county, and we appreciate that. And I appreciate the chamber staff for making us look good. And
Dave, we may want to announce that we have a lady with Vanderbilt here, and I just pulled a blank on her name, so I'll excuse me.
Lynn Maddox.
So thank you very much, and thank you, Vanderbilt, for helping us with this.
Great. Appreciate the help. Thank you very much for our in-house audience, and appreciate you being with us. Appreciate the questions. Hope that you'll be back with us next month on the last Friday of the month, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.